And I, like my colleagues, would like to commend you for the work you've done again in the library sector in Limerick, and I'm sure it's something that should be and could be easily replicated across the country. I suppose I have a number of questions more around the housing end of things, and I've been approached by some autistic adults who have applied for social housing and obviously been accepted, and if they meet the other conditions, and receive HAP. But they submitted a HMD1 form and it was rejected. And they submitted it again and it was rejected again. And in fact, they were actually questioned on how their potential meltdown might affect their neighbours, which, instead of looking at it the other way, is the actions of neighbours might bring on a meltdown for an autistic person. An autistic person will only have the meltdown if they're influenced or are affected by what's around them in society. So I suppose, do you feel that there's enough understanding in the housing departments in our local authorities of autism, and that just because an autistic adult can advocate for themselves doesn't mean that they can actually, that every kind of housing will suit them, and that the specific types of housing only will suit? And the other is a grant for sensory rooms. I know you indicated there that some people apply through the disabled persons grants for the sensory room, but we know that they're oversubscribed anyway, and that there isn't sufficient funding for the grants as there are. Is there maybe an opening there for looking at a specific grant application that people could apply should they need to build on to add another room to their house? I mean, I mentioned earlier, I was speaking to a couple yesterday who have 7 children and 6 of them have sensory issues. So they need more space in their home, and they are looking at the grants. And the local authority is saying, yes, you can apply for the disabled persons grant, but we know that there's a huge waiting list on those, and it's not, that could take years. I will acknowledge that the local authority, where people are applying for housing and where there's an autistic child, are, sometimes saying, right, this family needs an additional room as a sensory room, and they are building that into new allocations. But it's just for autistic adults, I suppose, a lot of them are single adults, that their needs are not being taken into account and not being recognised. And as I said, the grants for the sensory rooms. Thank you.
So just speaking from a Limerick point of view, Limerick City and County Council, in our housing support service unit, we have a dedicated welfare team set up. So we have welfare individuals who will meet people who have medical needs such as autism. So, and then they would bring a recommendation report back to the allocations unit. So we feel that we are capturing the needs of the individual that way, but it's down to the supply versus the demand. Particularly, say, for single units, a lot of autistic adults may be looking for a 1-bedroom unit, and it's just the supply isn't there for us, But from a welfare point of view, from an assessment point of view, we feel that our welfare team is on the ground working with individuals with medical needs such as autism. In relation to the grant, yeah, I'm sure the local authorities would be very open if there was a specific funding stream made available for sensory rooms, because we're confined to the parameters of our funding constraints. So, and as you mentioned, and I acknowledge that there are stretched to capacity, the funding streams that are there at the moment. So we would welcome any additional grants that were made available.
Okay. And I know you mentioned there that there are a number of projects that the City and Council have undertaken in Limerick around autism, and that you have sought advice from organisations that represent or advocate for people with autism. Are you aware if you have many autistic employees, that have actually self-identified as autistic? I'm positive that you have lots of employees who are autistic, but they may not have, identified as autistic.
I wouldn't have that number to hand because I don't work, it would be a human resources number, and I'm sure all that information would be kept confidential to human resources, so I wouldn't be aware of the numbers working in the organisation. But in terms of the staff training and development, I mentioned that they're rolling out this autism awareness programme, which is excellent at the moment. So there's a very large uptake of that.
Yeah, it's welcome that there will be autistic people involved in any of the projects, because I mean that's what the UNCRPD is about. It's about inclusion and acceptance, and it's about, you know, autistic people making decisions for themselves. So, yeah, thank you.